Most people wake up each morning and slip into a rhythm that feels safe, predictable, and real. The alarm rings. Coffee brews, emails flow, tasks get done. There's a sense of forward motion of purpose, even but beneath it all, there's something eerily mechanical, like gears turning in a well-oiled machine. You move, speak, think, and sleep, all while sensing, just beneath the surface, that something important is missing. It's not dramatic. It doesn't scream for attention. It whispers a quiet ache. A flicker of wonder in a child's laugh, the golden hue of sunlight on your skin, the stillness of an empty room. Moments that feel too beautiful for their simplicity, as if they're trying to tell you something. But you brush it off. Of course, life is just biology, deadlines, and repetition. Righty, that's what you've been taught. That reality is what you can measure, what you can touch. Productivity is praised. Distraction is normal. Silence is rare. In this carefully structured world, anything that can't be explained is quickly ignored. And so we keep moving, faster and louder, hoping momentum will fill the void. But it never does, because what's missing isn't outside you. It's a lens that's been blurred. A truth that's been covered not by force, but by habit. And habit is a powerful spell. What if the things we call ordinary are actually sated in disguise? What if that strange stillness you sometimes feel isn't emptiness, but presence? What if reality itself has layers and most of us are only seeing the outer shell? This isn't a rejection of science or logic. It's an invitation to look deeper. Because sometimes, even in the middle of a busy life, something breaks through. A moment too strange to explain, a coincidence too precise, a gut feeling you can't shake. These are not glitches. They are opening signals from something deeper trying to reach you, trying to remind you you are more than your schedule. Life is more than survival. This is why some people feel like they're sleepwalking through their own existence. It's not that they're broken. It's that they've never been shown what's behind the curtain, never taught to question the foundation of normal. And when you never question it, you never realize you're only seeing half the story. The colors are dimmer, the sound is muted, and every now and then, your soul knocks on the door, asking, is this really all there is? So let me ask you, what if those fleeting moments of beauty, awe, and stillness are actually messages? What if life has been speaking to you all along in patterns, pauses, and pulses, but you've been too busy, too focused to hear it? What if everything you thought was mundane was actually mystical? Because here's the secret: reality only feels ordinary until you begin to notice it differently. And once you do, once you really see, something awakens. Something ancient, quiet, and eternal, but we're not ready to name it yet. First, you must feel the question rising inside you. That gentle but powerful question: what if this moment is not just a moment, but a whisper from a hidden dimension? Pause for a moment and look around you. Everything seems stable, familiar. You know the names of the things you see: chair, sky, hand, breath. You think you understand what's happening: molecules bumping into molecules, cause and effect shaping outcomes, biology dictating behavior. But underneath all that certainty, there's a crack. A thin seam in the fabric of reality, just wide enough for a whisper to slip through. You've heard it before, in dreams that felt more real than waking life, in déjà vu that sent chills through your spine, in the way certain moments seem to pause time itself, if only for a second. That's the whisper, and it's asking, are you sure this is all there is? Across cultures, eras, and civilizations, there have always been those who listened to that whisper. They didn't always have the same words, but they all pointed to the same hidden truth: that the material world is not the full story, that something sacred, alive, intelligent, flows through everything unseen, but not unfelt. The Egyptians called it Mat, the Hindus, Brahman, the Taoists, the Tao. Indigenous traditions call it spirit or great mystery. Even modern physics, in its own way, now hints at forces and patterns that cannot be fully observed, only intuited. The deeper we look, the more the solid world dissolves into vibration, probability, and paradox, as if existence itself is hiding something. But why would reality be structured like this? Why veil the sacred behind the ordinary? Perhaps because the truth is too powerful to be forced. It must be chosen. It must be seen through stillness, not noise, through presence, not speed. That whisper beneath reality is not there to prove anything. It's there to invite you gently, silently, to look closer, to ask better questions, to soften the lens of logic just enough to let the unknown shine through. Not to abandon science or reason, but to realize their limits and wonder what lies beyond. And here's the mystery that begins to unfold. The more we open to the idea that something deeper is at play, the more evidence begins to appear. Patterns repeat, symbols arise, life begins to mirror your inner world in ways too elegant to ignore. The veil begins to thin because something outside has changed, but because you have. The whisper grows louder when you start to listen. And suddenly, what once looked like coincidence now feels like choreography. Not random, not accidental, but intentional. So let me ask you, what if science and spirituality were never meant to be enemies? What if they've both been pointing to the same mystery all along, one through formulas and observation, the other through silence and intuition? What if, by bridging both worlds, we could finally hear what the universe has been trying to tell us all this time? That we're not just in reality, we are of it. And reality itself is far more alive, sacred, and interconnected than we were ever taught to believe. But don't worry, we're not diving all the way in just yet. First, we need to step back and look up, because to understand what's hidden, we must first behold what's visible, the cosmos and the astonishing precision that holds it all together. Step outside on a clear night and look up. What do you see? Stars scattered across an infinite canvas, or something more, a message written in light? At first glance, the universe seems chaotic, random, overwhelming. But the deeper we look, through telescopes, through mathematics, through wonder, a different pattern emerges, one of exquisite order, breathtaking precision, and staggering intentionality. The position of Earth in the galaxy, the balance of forces in atoms, the rhythm of planetary motion, none of it is haphazard. In fact, scientists call it fine-tuning, because if just one variable in the cosmos were altered by a fraction, life as we know it couldn't exist. Take gravity, for example. If it were slightly stronger or weaker, even by 1 part in a billion, the universe would collapse or fly apart. Or consider the distance of the Earth from the Sun, a few degrees closer, and we burn, a few degrees farther, and we freeze. And yet, here we are, perfectly placed, breathing, conscious, observing. Doesn't it feel strange to call this coincidence? At some point, even the most skeptical minds begin to feel the pressure of the question, could this be the result of chance? Or is it possible that everything, from the spiral of galaxies to the spiral of your own DNA, is part of a grand, sacred architecture? But here's where it gets even more fascinating. The precision we see in the cosmos isn't just out there, it mirrors itself within us. Your body is a living orchestra of microscopic timing and balance. Your cells communicate in symphonies, your breath dances with the heartbeat of the planet. You are not separate from the stars, you are made of them, quite literally. The iron in your blood was forged in the heart of a dying star. And that's not poetry, that's physics. You are stardust, arranged by something or someone that seems to understand beauty, balance, and rhythm. Now ask yourself, why would a universe so vast, so exact, and so intricately interwoven create a species that asks questions about meaning, purpose, and divinity? Why this deep human longing to find connection? To seek truth beyond the surface? It's as if the universe wanted to be seen, as if consciousness was written into the code from the very beginning. This is not about religion. This is about resonance, about listening to the silent symphony behind all things, and beginning to suspect that what we call reality might be more like a divine composition. So here's the real question. If the universe is this intelligent on a cosmic scale, what about on the microscopic one? What happens when we stop looking outward for answers and start looking inward at the smallest, strangest building blocks of our reality? Because the same mystery that governs the galaxies is hiding inside a single particle. And that's where we're going next. The deeper we look into matter, the more it disappears. That's not a metaphor, that's quantum physics. If the cosmos amazed you with its vastness and precision, then prepare yourself, because at the tiniest levels of existence, reality becomes strange. Welcome to the quantum world, where particles exist into places at once, where nothing is truly solid, and where observation itself seems to shape what is real. You've probably heard of quarks and gluons, the building blocks of protons and neutrons. But here's the paradox: the more we study them, the more they defy explanation. Particles blink in and out of existence. They respond to being watched. And some appear to communicate across space instantly. How is this possible? This is called quantum entanglement. And it's not science fiction, it's science. Two particles, once linked, seem to know what the other is doing, even if they're light years apart. It's as if space and time don't matter. Cause and effect begin to blur. This isn't just hard to understand, it breaks the rules of the classical world. And here's the most haunting part: the quantum realm isn't just out there in laboratories. It's inside you. Every atom in your body, every breath you take, dances to this same invisible rhythm, which raises a profound question: if even the smallest parts of us are connected in ways we can't fully see, what else might be connected? Modern science doesn't have all the answers, but it's beginning to sound more like ancient mysticism. For centuries, spiritual traditions have whispered of an unseen field, a web of energy and intelligence binding all things together. Call it spirit, chi, prana, or the divine matrix. Now, physics is giving it new names: the zero-point field, unified field theory, quantum foam. Different languages, same whisper, a reminder that maybe, just maybe, reality isn't a machine, but a mystery that responds to awareness, a mystery that seems to be conscious, or at least shaped by consciousness. Think about that. If observing a particle can alter its state, what does that mean about the role of the observer you? Could it be that consciousness isn't just a product of the universe, but a participant in its unfolding? This idea, once confined to spiritual texts, now echoes in the halls of science: that reality may be participatory, that perhaps we're not separate from what we perceive, we're in relationship with it, not just witnesses of creation, but co-creators within it. So now, pause, reflect. The stars above, the particles within, the breath you're taking right now, all of it, connected in ways we're only beginning to understand. And if particles behave as if they know each other, maybe we do too. Maybe this same thread of invisible connection guns through every person you've ever met, every feeling you've ever felt. And if that's true, then what are you really made of? Just matter? Or something more, something sacred? We're almost ready to answer that. But first, we must revisit a truth that is both ancient and intimate. You are dust and breath. You were formed from the same particles that make up the stars. The calcium in your bones, the carbon in your skin, the iron in your blood, all born in the heart of ancient supernovas. In that sense, you are dust, matter, earth, a collection of elements, astonishing precision. But that's not the whole story, is it? Because somewhere along the way, something else entered you, something unseen, something that animates the body, gives it motion, memory, love, will, and wonder. That something, we've called it many names: spirit, soul, consciousness, divine breath. Whatever you choose to call it, you know it's there, you feel it. It's the part of you that watches the thoughts, that survives the silence, that aches when life feels hollow. It's what gives the dust its dance. Ancient traditions understood this long before science tried to define it. In the Hebrew creation story, humanity was formed from the earth, but didn't become alive until the divine breath entered the nostrils. In Sanskrit, the word prana means both breath and life force. Across cultures, the sacred was never something far away, it was in you. You were not simply a creature on the earth. You were a bridge between heaven and earth, seen and unseen, matter and mystery. This idea is not metaphor, it's identity. You are both the clay and the spark, the soil and the soul. But here's where it gets even more extraordinary. This duality is not a contradiction, it's a design. You were meant to hold both, to feel hunger and compassion, to touch the ground while dreaming of eternity. Your body is not a prison for the soul, it's a temple, a sacred vessel capable of translating the invisible into action, love, art, laughter, presence. When you speak, it's not just breath vibrating in the throat, it's spirit made audible. When you touch someone with kindness, it's not just skin, it's soul reaching across the divide. Every action, no matter how small, becomes part of something eternal. And yet, most people live divided, trapped in one side or the other. Some worship the body and forget the spirit. Others escape into spirit and neglect the body. But your power, your truth, lies in the fusion, in remembering that your very existence is a living paradox, finite and infinite, temporary and eternal, dust and breath. This remembrance is not about escaping the world. It's about entering it more fully, with sacred awareness. It's about realizing that when you breathe, you are participating in something cosmic. When you love, you are revealing the face of the divine. You are not here to transcend the world, you are here to sanctify it. So now, ask yourself, if I carry both the material and the divine within me, what does that mean for how I live? What does it mean for how I eat, work, speak, rest, create, forgive, celebrate? What if everything you do is not just action, but expression, not just motion, but meaning? Because once you realize you are both dust and breath, you can no longer pretend your life is ordinary. You begin to see it for what it truly is, a sacred thread in the vast tapestry of being. And from that sacred awareness, a new way of living begins to emerge. We've been taught to divide life into sacred and secular. Sacred is quiet, spiritual, elevated, found in temples, in rituals, in prayer. Secular is everything else: the traffic, the job, the kitchen, the mess. But what if that split was never true? What if the sacred was never meant to be separate, but woven into the fabric of daily life? What if every act, yes, every act carries the potential to be spiritual? Not because of what you do, but because of how you see. When you realize you are dust and breath, body and spirit, then everything you touch becomes a portal to the divine. Washing dishes can become a meditation. Walking through the city can become a moving prayer. The way you speak to a stranger can carry echoes of eternity. Because once you awaken to the spiritual nature of existence, you begin to see that nothing is neutral. Every word you speak is a vibration sent into the world. Every thought has energy. Every choice ripples through the field of being. And suddenly, the mundane is no longer mundane. It is drenched in meaning. It is sated in disguise. Your life, exactly as it is, becomes a ceremony, a temple with no walls. But this doesn't mean you must live in solemn reverence. On the contrary, it means you're free to celebrate, to laugh, to rest, to create. Spirituality is not about being serious. It's about being present, fully here, fully alive. When you're awake to the spiritual nature of reality, you don't escape the world, you embrace it differently. Eating becomes a blessing, work becomes an offering, rest becomes restoration. Even the moments of pain, of conflict, of doubt, carry hidden invitations to transform. The spiritual path is not a path away from life, it's a path deeper into life. This changes everything. You stop waiting for the right moment to be spiritual. You stop confining divinity to a specific place or pasture. You begin to walk through the world with open eyes, open hands, open heart. And in that openness, you become a conduit, a living thread between heaven and earth. Every act from making your bed to holding someone's hand becomes part of the sacred dance. You start to realize spirituality was never about what you believe. It's about what you practice, and practice doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in motion, in messiness, in the raw material of being human. So now, pause and feel this truth settle in everything you do matters. Everything is connected. Every act is a spiritual act. But this way of living has a rhythm, an ancient rhythm. One that's been forgotten by our modern world, a rhythm of work and rest, doing and being, effort and surrender. A sacred cycle that aligns us not only with nature, but with the divine architecture itself. And to fully embody this sacred way of life, we must remember the rhythm that was there from the beginning. We live in a world obsessed with movement, more, faster. Now, the clock rules us, the screen calls us. We wear exhaustion like a badge of honor, and still, we push forward forgetting something essential. Not just balance, not just peace, but rhythm. Deep within the design of creation, there is a pulse, a sacred sequence, one that ancient traditions knew well, and that modern life has nearly forgotten the rhythm of work and rest, of intention and surrender, of creating and celebrating. Without it, we fall out of sync not just with ourselves, but with the very fabric of reality. Look at nature. The moon waxes and wanes, the tides rise and fall. The seasons shift from labor to stillness. Even your heart, that tireless drum inside you, beats not in constant flow, but in contraction and release. This is not weakness, it is wisdom, a divine blueprint woven into everything that lives. But somewhere along the way, we lost touch with it. We began to measure worth by productivity. We replaced reflection with urgency. Rest became laziness, celebration became indulgence. And in doing so, we severed ourselves from something sacred, the holy art of pausing. But the ancients knew better. In the Hebrew tradition, there was the Sabbath, not a day of rules, but a day to remember. A space in time to step back and see life as it truly is, whole, sacred, enough. In indigenous cultures, ceremonies marked not just survival, but gratitude, storytelling, laughter, dance. Even in your own body, celebration is encoded: the release of joy, the stillness after a deep breath, the warmth of presence shared. These aren't luxuries, they are instructions. They are how we return to harmony. So what would it look like to reclaim this rhythm? To work with devotion, yes, but also to rest with reverence. To move through life not in a frantic sprint, but in a divine dance. It doesn't mean abandoning responsibility. It means infusing your days with awareness of when to act, and when to yield, when to speak, and when to be silent, when to give, and when to receive. This is not time management. This is time consecration. It's not about doing less. It's about doing with presence. And when we live this way, even ordinary moments, a meal, a walk, a sunset, become holy again. And here's the miracle: when you step into this rhythm, the world responds. Life softens, meaning returns, gratitude flows. You begin to feel aligned, not because everything is easy, but because everything fits. You realize that your soul was never asking for escape, only for rhythm, for space to breathe, for time to remember. And in that remembrance, a shift happens. One that changes how you see not just your schedule, but your very existence. And that shift, my friend, is the doorway into a new way of seeing. Because when you live from this sacred rhythm, you begin to notice something strange. Everything starts to shimmer with meaning. Even the smallest things, especially the smallest things. There comes a moment, quiet, subtle, but unmistakable, when everything looks the same, yet feels completely different. The room you're in, the people you pass, the body you inhabit, nothing has changed. And yet everything has. This is the shift, not a new belief, not a new theory, but a new way of seeing, a sacred lens. Suddenly, you notice beauty in the ordinary. A cup of tea becomes a ritual, a tree becomes a teacher, silence becomes full of presence, and in that presence, you realize this has always been here. You were just too distracted to see it. This shift isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It moves like light, silent, but transformative. And once it happens, life stops feeling like a sequence of random events. Instead, it begins to feel orchestrated, not controlled, but intentional. You begin to recognize patterns, echoes, symbols. You stop asking, "Is this spiritual?" and start asking, "How could it not be?" Your very existence, your breath, your being becomes evidence. You don't need permission to call something sacred. You just need to see it as sacred. That's the turning point. And from that turning point, new emotions arise, not forced, not manufactured, natural. Gratitude appears not because everything is perfect, but because you're finally present. Compassion expands not just for others, but for yourself, or returns the kind you felt as a child, before the world taught you to look away. And with that all comes reverence, not in some temple made of stone, but in this moment, this breath, this ordinary miracle we call now. You're no longer living towards something sacred, you're living within it. The old lens, the one that saw separation, struggle, and scarcity, begins to dissolve, and with it, your identity expands. You're not just a worker, a thinker, a body moving through tasks. You are awareness in motion, a soul in form, a participant in a divine unfolding. Life stops being about control and starts being about communion. You move from fighting reality to dancing with it, from chasing meaning to discovering it in everything, even in what's broken, even in what hurts, because the sacred doesn't avoid the shadows. It transforms them. So here we are, you've walked the path, you've opened your eyes, and now the world shimmers. Not because the world changed, but because you did. And that's the secret. Reality responds to how you perceive it. When you see it as sacred, it begins to speak to you, guide you, embrace you, not through lightning bolts or visions, but through the simplicity of being alive. And now, the question arises, what happens when ordinary people begin to live from this awakened state? What does life look like when it's seen through the eyes of the sacred? Let's find out. Awakening doesn't always begin with light. Sometimes it begins with loss, with heartbreak, with silence so heavy it presses against the soul. And then something shifts. A woman loses everything: her job, her home, her sense of control, and in the quiet after the storm, she sits under a tree and feels, for the first time, that she belongs to something greater. A man, caught in the noise of success, suddenly hears his child's laughter and realizes he's been missing the miracle unfolding in front of him all along. These are not stories of escape. They are stories of return, of eyes opening, not to fantasy, but to the depth that was always there. Sometimes it happens in nature. You're walking alone, the sun hits the leaves just right, and suddenly the trees aren't just trees, they're ancient, alive, speaking. You feel small, but not insignificant small, the way a star is small in the vastness, yet still burns with purpose. You feel seen, not by anyone in particular, but by life itself. Or maybe it happens in stillness, a moment of meditation, or silence after grief, when everything inside you settles, and for the first time, there's peace, not because the pain is gone, but because you've stopped resisting it. These are moments of awakening, and they don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they arrive quietly through art, through music, through a single sentence that strikes your heart like lightning. A nurse who sits beside a dying patient and suddenly feels the presence of something invisible in the room. A child who sees beauty in a crack on the sidewalk and asks a question that feels like a portal. Awakening wears many faces. It doesn't discriminate. It meets you where you are, in the grocery store, in traffic, in heartbreak, in joy. It doesn't care how spiritual you think you are. It only asks one thing: are you paying attention? These aren't rare moments reserved for mystics or monks. They're available to all of us. They're not just spiritual highlights, they're reminders that reality is layered. That what we call normal is just one octave of a much vaster song. And when someone awakens to that song, they begin to move differently, speak differently, love differently. Their presence becomes healing, their joy becomes infectious. Not because they've learned something new, but because they've remembered something ancient. Something that was waiting patiently in the stillness of their soul. And now, what about you? Have you ever felt it, that fleeting moment when time stood still? When a sunset felt like a message? When someone's eyes reminded you of home? Have you ever sensed that something invisible was guiding you, watching you, inviting you? These are not coincidences. These are invitations, openings, whispers of the sacred. So let me ask, what if your awakening is already happening right now and all that's left is to say yes? Take a breath. Feel this moment. You've come a long way, not across distance, but through awareness. From the surface of routines to the depths of reality's hidden rhythms. And now, something has changed. Not outside, but within you. A veil has lifted, a lens has shifted, and you can no longer pretend that life is just tasks and noise and motion. Because now you see the world is drenched in meaning, not because it suddenly became sacred, but because you finally remembered that it always was. The question now isn't whether life is spiritual. The question is, how will you live now that you know? Will you rush back into old patterns, letting the noise drown out the whisper, or will you pause and choose to see again? Because that's the key. This isn't a belief to adopt. It's a perception to cultivate. A sated attention, a conscious presence, one that sees the divine in dust, the infinite in the ordinary. One that lets every moment become a teacher, every person a mirror, every breath a prayer. You don't need more time. You need more awareness within the time you already have. This isn't about perfection. It's about participation. It's about showing up open-eyed, open-hearted, and letting life speak to you through its hidden language. Through symbols, synchronicities, beauty, heartbreak, silence. Through the rhythm of work and rest, of giving and receiving. Through the dance of matter and mystery. And the more you respond with awareness, the more life responds to you, revealing its layers, its patterns, its voice. You realize that you are not a separate observer. You are a thread in the sacred web, a living expression of the same intelligence that spins galaxies and opens flowers. So what now? Live it, practice it. Let it shape the way you walk through the world. Let it slow your breath and soften your gaze. Let it teach you to listen more deeply, to love more fully, to speak more truthfully. Let your life become a sacred act, not because you're trying to be spiritual, but because you are remembering that you already are. And in that remembering, you become part of something timeless. Something that doesn't need a name to be known. Something that lives in the space between silence and song. And now, we turn to you. Have you ever had a moment where the ordinary felt sacred? A feeling, a symbol, a presence you couldn't explain? We invite you to share your experience in the comments below. Someone else might be searching for exactly the insights you've been holding. And if this journey opens something in you, even just a little, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this path is just beginning. And there is so much more to see, so much more to remember. Reality has always been sacred. Now, you finally see it.